probably made it really known that I was going to go do recovery, beach recovery, you know. I was probably like, nah.
How do you know if someone's doing beach recovery?
Yeah, because they've told you about it. And I got in the car, drive down there, and the 2 days leading into that, been fair downpour in Melbourne, like really wet. And it was the most undesirable setting, but I just had this headstrong, like nothing to chance. I'm going to do everything I can. And I guarantee you that I have set foot in dams in Tadioune that were cleaner than Port Phillip Bay on that day, but I braved it. And I was out there for 10 to 15 minutes and I was just about to get out, doing a little bit of walking, and then bang. And like when I say bang, it's not just like a moment in time. It was so powerful. And I remember it like through my foot and I was like, oh, that hurts. And I lifted my foot out of the water and noticed that like it was like a puncture wound and there was like blood oozing out of it. And
was it attached?
The barb was still sort of there. And I was like, well, that can mean one thing. And I'm by myself because, as I've alluded to, I'm the only one that'd go and do water-based recovery at Port Phillip Bay on that day. And I was like, what do I do? So I was okay when I was in the water because I could swim. I could start swimming to shore, but then I got to shore and I couldn't weight bear. So I was like half hopping, and like the Port Melbourne beach, like it's not 10 meters. Like there's a fair stint of sand to get to my car. So I take it on and start hopping. That's not working, and then I start crawling, and like it eventually turned out to be like that scene out of Wolf of Wall Street where he's had too many Quaaludes and he's driven his car home, and just like an absolute mess getting to the car. So I climb into the car, and that was, you know, I think in my mind I thought, oh, that's job done. But then I got to the car and I was like, oh, I'm not even close. Like I've got to do something about this. So start the car, not really sure like which geographical direction I'm heading in, but I just hit the call button on the steering wheel. And sure enough, it is Shane Edwards. I'd spoken to him that morning, and he answers the phone and he's like, mate. And I was like, shut up. I've just been barbed by a fucking stingray, mate. And it's like dead quiet, and I could almost like envision his face, just like his eyes get really big when he's like, something's like really perplexing, and he's just like, what? And then he's like, nah, you're having me on, mate. And I was like, no, I'm serious. I'm trying to drive down Bay Street in Port Melbourne. My foot, it is killing me. And they're like, what you don't know about stingrays is they've got like a bit of like a mucus, like toxic membrane, and the pain, it is unbelievable. So I'm like trying to drive and trying to talk through it, and I'm on the phone to someone who can't help me. I don't know why I called him. It just seemed like the best thing to do. Anyway,
where is the barb at this point?
The barb's in my foot.
Whereabouts? Like just for
like on the inside of my left foot. Like if you look at the highest point of the arch of your foot, just back towards the heel a little bit, and it punctured my foot like two inches or just over 2 inches. So it almost like went right through my foot, and I was just like you don't prepare for that stuff. Like your standard first aid's not going to sort you out for that. So I've eventually called the doctor, which is the first call I should have made. And I was like, oh, there's a bit of traffic, and I was catastrophizing the whole thing. And he's just like, just go into the Alfred, mate. Just get yourself to the Alfred. And that was, to be honest, I love Reg, but that was not great advice at the time. I should have gone to the Epworth, because I go into the Alfred and I've got a towel and I've got a spray jacket on, and I like hop into emergency, like park my car obnoxiously where the ambulance park, and takes them a fair while to see me, and I'm in a fair bit of pain. Eventually get into a nurse's room, and the first question that I got was, did you see the specimen that injured you? And I was like, do you understand how dirty the bay is? I couldn't see anything. And I was like getting real hostile, and she's like, so you don't know it's a stingray? And I was like, oh, look, I'm not David Attenborough, but I'd understand that this is sort of like the injury that you get. And she's like, so it could have been a crab. That's what she said. And I was like, oh, look, you're going to have to get some painkillers into me. You're going to have to talk to my doctor. So I started throwing the phone around, and Anyway, we got some painkillers into me, and I started to subside, and I started to just see how ludicrous the circumstances I was in, and I was reluctant to call anyone else, but eventually I messaged I've got 3 sisters, and I messaged them, and I was like, oh, look, this is the circumstances. It's pretty dire. I'm a bit embarrassed, but, at some point we'll see the humour in it. And my youngest sister, Zoe, it was almost like she'd just got the message, and next thing you know, the hospital doors open and she's there. And she must have read, like, at some point we'll see the humour in it, but she must have read that as, like, almost immediately. So she walks through the door, and the words that come out of her mouth are, oh, Davey, I'm so sorry. But the look on her face was like, this is fucking unreal. I wouldn't miss this for the world. And it was like, she was like saying these things, and I was like, oh yeah, you sort of don't really mean that, but you're like, I'm finding this really, really funny. And she was exactly the person that I needed at that time. And then after that, she started to, she turned it the whole, like, had the nurses like eating out of her hand, and like the whole circumstance actually turned into like a really funny scene. There's actually a photo on my Instagram that she took around that time, which is like still to this day one of my favorite photos. But I've at no point elaborated in that depth of what the story was. I was actually like really ashamed of it, but now I just see it's like, it's as much a part of my identity as like any of the other stuff that we've spoken about. So I'm glad I got to share it with you.
Oh, I appreciate it. I'm happy that the continual digging got that out. That is an all-time story. In all seriousness, how dangerous can that be? Because like they're pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Well, yeah. They're obviously like it can be fatal if it goes through an organ.
Look, a different place.
But they're yeah, I just think in your foot, they're not going to hurt you. Yeah. Like they're not going to like.
Besides the pain.
Yeah, the pain is extraordinary. And as like I've just shared, I've dislocated kneecaps. Yeah. I've had substantial injuries, but like nothing even close to the pain that I felt on that day trying to drive myself to hospital. So.
I think it's that's not funny, but in general, like
you like my sister now.
I do like that story. It's funny because. Well, it's not funny, actually. I'm trying to think of something to say that it's not funny. It's weird because when you're a footy player, you're an athlete, you're used to getting injured. Like you said, you're used to hurting your knee, used to hurting your shoulder, used to hurting all these things. But when those freak accidents happen and it's like the club doctor can't help you, like you need to go to hospital, you're like, fuck, this is different. Like, this is actually serious now. It's actually quite scary.
Well, that was the call when Reg answered the phone. Obviously, as I said, like I've got this long injury history, and a lot, like they're not all generic. Like some of them are peculiar. It's just like, when did you do that? Like I've had a tree branch or tree limb fall on my hip, which was another incident that involved another sister. Like I've had all this stuff go on. So I've called the club doctor on my day off, and it rang for a bit. Yeah. And he's probably looking at it and he's thinking, Dave Astbury. Does he not understand that
Panadol or something?
Yeah. Does he not understand it's my day off too? Yeah. And then I called him, and I could almost just feel the disappointment come through. It's just like, only that bloke. So probably at the end of the season in 2015, I imagine the club doctor was part of the football club keen to sweep me out because that was going to lighten his workload.
Oh, mate, the amount of bills I think of what we would cost as commodities.